This act contains several regulations, but these two are the main ones. The first one is reporting obligation for the large-scale enterprises. And the second one is a requirement to achieve energy efficiency criteria or targets for the manufacturers. This is called a top runner program. And for the incentives, we started energy conservation subsidy packages last year, and just last month we have the another budget for the next year's subsidies. So let's move on to the regulations. And then I'm going to talk about sorry, and this slide is reporting obligation for large-scale enterprises, and the enterprises who consume energy more 1,000 and 1,500 kiloliter oil equivalent must report each year's amount of energy consumption and the plan. And submit the plan to improve the energy intensity. Sorry. And until last year, the enterprises had reported the amount of just fossil energy consumption. I guess this is because this act was enforced in the 1970s energy crisis when we focused on just the fossil energy conservation. And then we renewed this act last year, and now enterprises are obliged to report the amount of fossil and non-fossil consumption. Actually, they report the CO2 emissions, but it is evaluated in another act. And they are also required to submit a plan to shift the energy consumption to non-fossil energy. Then we changed the act formal name, the Act of Nationalizing Energy Use and Shift to Non-Fossil Energy. The second example is Top Runner Program, a regulation for manufacturers. As I said, in other countries, Top Runner Program is, I guess, not so popular. MEPS, I mean, minimum efficiency minimum efficiency performance standard is more popular, I guess. But Japan takes a unique approach to improve the energy efficiency of appliance. In this Top Runner program, we pick a Top Runner efficient product on the left graph of the product A, and we set the Top Runner criteria. And several years ago, we require the manufacturer, all the manufacturers meet the target by with the average of their product. And the right graph shows how this this Top Runner program works. This is an example of the air conditioners, and thanks to this program, the efficiency improved 30%. And we are just renewing this program for the clean energy transition. I mean, this is a focus on not just the efficiency, but what kind of fuel they use. This is under discussion in the public committee, and I'm gonna talk about how this new program will work. And each manufacturer, this is discussed with for just water heaters. Each manufacturers have their own score, and the score is calculated as sum of the each each manufacturers have their own make maybe gas boilers or heat pumps or other maybe hybrids or etc. And they they added their own each product's fossil energy consumption rate, and they calculate their own scores, and we requires each manufacturers of water heaters to meet the targets several years ago. And this will work to accelerate the manufacturers manufacturing the more cleaner water heaters. And let's move on to the energy conservation subsidy package. We also we started these energy conservation subsidies packages last year. And so during the energy crisis in 2022, and the prices of the gasolines or electricity rapidly increased in Japan. Actually, the government started the support for the prices, but we think the support is a kind of emergent support and not to be continued. We rather need to promote more energy conservation. Then we strengthened the support for energy conservation last year and started energy conservation subsidy package. We support both businesses and households. For businesses, we support to replace inefficient facilities. And SMEs can hear the advice from energy expert with about €100. And for households, we also support the insulation, retrofitting, and replace water heaters. And this month, we have just strengthened this support more. And we are also trying to accelerate the energy transition in this package. Yeah, for businesses, I'm gonna explain about the facility replacement subsidies. I heard that this subsidy starts more than 10 years ago, but the amount of budget is highest today. Here is the overview of the subsidy. There are three types of support. Type 1 is the high outcomes, 10% improvement rate, or 700 kiloliters of consumption reduction. And the type 3 is easier to use. Companies can select the energy efficient facilities from a list. And this type is popular especially for SMEs. And this year, we will start a new type 2. Companies can use this type when they challenge to, electrification or fuel switching. And they also select the facilities from the list, and they can select electric furnace, heat pumps, and so on. And we're gonna promote the clean energy transition with this new type. Next, the household subsidies, especially the residential water heater. And before I move to the detail of the support, let me explain about the overview of energy consumption in Japan's household. As the left graph shows, water heater is one of the largest part of household energy consumption. The point is that the space heating and the water heater is shown separately. I guess in many European countries, several rooms or houses are heated with one heating equipment. It is called central heating system. On the other hand, in Japan, each room usually has its own space heater. And this is called individual heating system. And that's why water heater is not counted as a space heater in Japan. And by the way, we Japanese habitually take a bath every day, so water heater consume so much energy. And we want to the service the detail. We started the support for residential high efficient water heaters last year. You can choose heat pumps hybrid, which is the hybrid of gas boiler and the heat pumps, and you can choose the residential fuel cells. And we'll add the amount of the support per unit this year. And this is because we had, for example, United Kingdom and other countries are also planning to add the amount to accelerate the replacement of old water heater. Although the usage of the hot water differs, but we think it is important for each country in relatively cold area to promote water heaters energy conservation and clean energy transition. And one more thing, we are trying to promote demand response with this support. Yeah, in Japan, many water heaters is accustomed to heat water in night. And this is because the electricity price is low in the night. Demand response in water heater means to shift the heating time to the daytime. To realize this, the water heater's controller need to be able to connect to the internet and able to shift the heating time by signal and by aggregators. So we are planning to add the amount of the support for such kind of DR-ready water heaters. And furthermore, we are also discussing new regulation for DR-ready appliance, which will be similar one with the top runner program I shown. Yeah, lastly, as I explained, Japan's demand side energy policies are now changing to accelerate the clean energy transition. And the concept evolution of the energy efficiency policy to support clean energy transition is recognized in G7 communique, which is held in Japan this year. So I'm looking forward to hearing other countries' policy today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Does this work? Oh, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Tosaka, for your remarks. It's very helpful, especially, I would like to invite you to take the seat on the stage. Many thanks for highlighting really how energy efficiency policies in Japan have evolved. And this evolution is the theme of this workshop, from more equipment-based policies really into demand-side policies. And I also want to take this opportunity and note the reference to the IEA policy packages as well that involves regulation, incentives, and information. And it's been shown that while those three policy tools taken together, they really achieve the higher gains in energy efficiency. And I think Japan has exemplified that you are working along those three levers with the regulation policies, ensuring that equipment that is allowed on the market is some of the most efficient equipment with your Top Runner program. Also, you've highlighted the recently increased incentives for consumers as well for adoption of energy efficiency equipment and measures. And of course, information. Japan has been a front runner in highlighting citizen campaigns and really promoting as much as possible engagement of citizens when it comes to energy efficiency policies. So now I would like to attempt to invite my next panelist to speak, and I would like to see if we can welcome Australia to continue this conversation and perhaps to delve a bit deeper into the topic of consumer engagement and consumer behavior, which has been on all of our minds after the energy crisis of 2022. So I'd like to ask the organizers to let Mr. Anup Nambiar from Distributed Energy Lead from AusNet to deliver his remarks. And we'll take a couple seconds to see if Mr. Anup is online.
Hi, I'm not sure if can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Oh, brilliant. We've been having an exciting time with technology this morning, and I know Vincent's been trying his best to get it all going. It looks like it's good. Thank you for having me join this conversation. It's obviously a very important one, and something that in Australia we've sort of been dealing with urgently. So I want to provide a bit of a context and a sense of what we've been doing recently in the space. So we've just come off of a 3-year trial to look at how consumer DER. So if you know the Australian context, we have a huge amount of solar going up on people's roofs. I think per capita, we are the leaders for rooftop solar generation as it stands now. And while that's a really good thing from the point of view of energy efficiency and renewables, it's actually become quite problematic for our national electricity market to run without getting smarter about how we orchestrate all of this. So again, we've got a fairly sophisticated electricity market. Our main market supplies electricity to 80% of Australians. And there's a supply-demand optimization process that runs and dispatches electricity every 5 minutes. So we've got a near real-time sort of spot market, and all of the electricity goes through there. So the issue we are having now is with all of this residential and small business solar and storage and ultimately EV going up, that supply-demand balancing has become really difficult. The price responsiveness is not predictable. The pricing signals are not reaching sort of consumer devices. And so all of that means we're starting to see a lot of risk and cost coming into the system, even though the generation cost itself is dropping. So we just completed a trial with the National Electricity Market Operator and AusNet as a distributor in the state of Victoria to see how we can bring together consumers represented by aggregators together with the market operator, with the electricity distribution company, and help the aggregators optimize how consumer DER is used. So the good news is it's possible. We ran a like real trial for almost a year, 333 days, where electricity 5-minute spot prices were channeled through this data sharing arrangement, and aggregators would respond by forecasting the capacity for each 5-minute interval going forward 48 hours, allowing the market operator to optimize the way the wholesale dispatch works, and then for distributors to dynamically assess the limits, because what's happening obviously is with a lot of solar, we're starting to see voltage issues in our low voltage circuits, and in the absence of a smart way to manage that, we are having to constrain exports, which is not a good thing. I mean, that goes against energy efficiency or effectively spilling solar generation. So we run this trial and managed to set up an arrangement that can scale up. And there's, we completed the trial earlier this year. That we published a lot of documentation around this, and currently we are looking at operationalizing it, so effectively transitioning our national electricity market into that sort of DER or CER integrated model. So, getting all the benefits of low marginal cost generation while keeping the risk to the system and the associated costs low. And again, the overall context is our forecasts show, the best forecasts we have show that by 2050, 40% of our generation is going to come from residential PV and connected to the distribution system. So that's a huge number, and 2050 is not that far off. So we're really keen to really get in front of this and obviously learn from what's happening elsewhere around the world, but also keen to share our sort of experience and findings in doing this. So thank you for the opportunity. Back to you, Christine.
Thank you very much, Anup. That was very helpful. And of course, I do encourage the audience to learn more about the EDGE project that Australia has now been piloting for these 3 years. It's an absolutely innovative initiative that really highlights the inclusion of those distributed energy resources and engaging consumers, of course, above all. So now turning to Europe. And the EU aims to be climate neutral by 2050, and this goal cannot be achieved without a strong focus on the demand side policies. The European Commission has been leading this conversation, and at the moment I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tudor Constantinescu, Principal Advisor and Director for the Director General for Energy at the European Commission. And now I'd like to ask the organizers to give Tudor the floor to present his slides and also to give his presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I hope now we had some struggling with Zoom, but now I see I was invited as a panelist, so now I hope you hear me.
We can hear you, Tudor. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if you can also see me, but I'm pleased to be with you online. Sorry, I couldn't arrange it in person, but happy to be with you and to share with you, as you have asked, about the relevance of this topic and demand-side energy policies, the strategic approach in the EU. How would you just a second, because now it's asking me to set the language. This is offering me the Japanese, so I don't know what I should do on the screen. I don't have the English. Okay, I set it save. Okay. Are you going to share the slides for me, or how does it work?
Would you be able to share the slides yourself using a share button by any chance?
No, because you told me differently before, so I was not prepared for that. It will take, excuse me, another 2 minutes to try to find the, because you said you asked this presentation for sharing the slides, so this is what I thought, but if not, I can try to find it and to share.
I think the organizers are now trying to pull up the slides up.
If not, I will try to find the slides again. And
I think it would be a good backup if you were to find the slides indeed.
But the instructions I got were different, Christina, sorry. A second.
You could start speaking without slides, perhaps, and then the organizers would get them up in just a few moments.
Look, I have the slides now here. but it was having to, so what do I need to do? Share screen or how does it? But I have many things open on the screen. I was not prepared for. But of course, I can start speak, and if someone will share the slides, we'll do it this way. Tell me what would be fair.
Well, let's see if the share button works, but I do see that the organizers are working on it right now. They're giving me a sign that they may be able to pull them up. Wonderful. We see your slides too. They're
Okay.
so on the
So
title
and
page.
it works. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, so then happy to restart. So basically, and I understand that how much time do I have for the intervention also, Christina? It was not clear to me.
Please take your time. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because I don't want to exhaust too much time. But I try to present because we have really a quite comprehensive approach for these demand side energy policies, and wanted to refer to them. Next slide, please. In a number of contexts. Now, of course, we had to have this approach in the context, first of all, of the Green Deal, and the effort to make Europe carbon neutral, first neutral continent, as our president declared in the beginning of this commission. And then we started with measures in this respect, including one of the first communications was on energy system integration, with one of the objectives being to promote energy efficiency at system level. Of course, we need energy efficiency in every activity we do, for every products we use, but a comprehensive integrated approach to the energy system would be beneficial and would enable also individual measures to play a more important. Therefore, also the demand policies have been anchored in a number of our policies. Let's start first, and here you'll see with the relevance in the energy markets and the market design. So with including here the smart metering. Then we had the Repower EU, which made us even more ambitious in terms of targets for energy efficiency, for renewables, for decarbonization, and for independence on imports of fossil fuels, notably from Russia after the invasion in Ukraine, and therefore we had to have more ambitious objectives, and we put this in the recast of the Energy Efficiency Directive and Renewables Directive, which were in plan based on the objectives of Fit for 55, which were designed for the Green Deal, but now even stronger ambitions. I will present a bit about the results of this, also about the EPBD, where we had the last dialogue. We also have a digitalization action plan, and we will have, this is still in plan for next year, a heat pumps action plan. So all these elements together show the interest we have for demand side approach in our energy policies. Next slide, please. And here you can see how the needs for flexibility in the future energy system will increase at least 2 times by 2030, will increase 3-4 times by 2050. And this is that we speak about dailies, that we speak about weekly, or we speak about monthly needs. And when we speak about all these needs, it's clear that we have to take into account all the solutions for flexibility we have, including demand side measures, including storage, including large-scale storage, and the approaches we have for energy system integration, and which bring in the end the overall system efficiency. Okay, so just to say that. Now, next slide is about this relevance in the demand flexibility in the EU. We had the electricity directive and regulations, which are very important, and now we try to upgrade this market design to have demand response to really help tackle volatility of wholesale electricity prices, and to bring benefits to the consumers and to the grids at the same time. In the next slide, you have, because I don't want to spend too much time, a quick overview of the reform of electricity market design. And you see here that we speak about enhancing non-fossil flexibility sources such as demand response and storage. So with the aim to accelerate renewables and to have an impact positively on prices and on the grid services. We also speak about enhancing the flexibility services by system operators and creating more opportunities for renewables and flexible sources. But it is in this context that the market design also includes measures that make flexibility solutions and smart energy services more accessible now to consumers. And for this, we have a number of tools, including to provide more, or we suggest more tools to provide more than one metering billing points, to provide for the user dedicated measurement services, sometimes embedded into the appliances. So, and also to have these prosumers and also the communities and self-consumption schemes which to be put in place. On the next slide, to show just some of the current results in terms of the smart metering, we have in the EU over 50% penetration rate. But I have to see that in about 12 member states, almost half, we have over 80%. Some countries really distinguishing, going to 98%, like Denmark, Finland, Estonia, Italy, Spain, Luxembourg, and Latvia. So these are really showing very, very strong deployment. Next slide, please. But as I said, demand side policies are not just have to be integrated also and linked to what we do with markets, but there are more things to do. There are more things to do, and this Repower EU, which I was mentioning, with the objective of reducing, first of all, dependency on gas from Russia, accelerating the energy transition, had a number of measures in many measures also the demand side. And these measures were on one time, short time, sorry, last year, 2022, including here an energy saving communication, but also longer term measures. And here we speak notably about energy efficiency, notably about renewables, more ambitious, but we also include here the role of hydrogen, which will have to decarbonize, play an important role in decarbonizing part of the energy system, which is based on molecules, not on electrons. And we know that even in all decarbonization objectives by 2050, about half of our final energy consumption may still be in molecules, synthetic gases, synthetic fuels, biofuels, and so on. So this needs to be decarbonized as well. But first of all, we are more engaged on the efficiency and renewables. Also here, the heat pumps with the objective to deploy 10 million heat pumps in the EU. So quite ambitious also on wind and solar on wind. We had recently a communication. Next slide. This is about showing the renewables, and clearly that this has implications on all sectors, because now it's a target of 42.5%, which we even aim maybe to get to 45. Aspirationally, it's clear that renewables have to enter and be integrated in all sectors of the economy. Next slide is not only power generation, where we reach clearly over 70% by 2030, but, and if you go to next slide, it's very much about having renewables entering and penetrating. We have objectives, targets in transport. We have objective and targets in heating and cooling. We have also in buildings, 49% actually renewable share in buildings. And we have in industry, which is also very, very important, and an objective of 1.6% increase per year. And the use of 40% sub-target for renewable fuels of non-biological origin. This is basically hydrogen derivatives from renewable hydrogen. And this is extremely important, making actually Europe the first region in the world with its concrete targets for renewable hydrogen, for creating this demand, which is necessary to break the chicken and egg problem. What we do first, produce, and where we use it if we produce, and so on, and unlocking the potential of a global renewable hydrogen market, on which we are happy to work with many countries in the context of G20, in the context of Clean Energy Ministerial, and in particular in our cooperation also bilateral with Japan. So that's why I'm happy to mention this, where we have a dedicated memorandum of cooperation. Next slide, please, is about the Energy Efficiency Directive. And this is extremely important. The directive has now entered actually into force, was adopted this autumn, and is very important because it has a number of key provisions. First of all, is about the energy efficiency target and indicative national contributions, the energy efficiency first principle, about how to strengthen the energy saving obligations in the end use, the exemplary role of the public sector, and the focus on energy poverty. Next slide, please. It's in terms of overall target, it's very ambitious. You know, this is quite unique to a large extent for Europe. This decrease of real consumption, in particular in the final sector, a final energy consumption abiding target of 760 million tons equivalent. So we have for 2030 this target of 11.7 decrease in energy consumption, which will go hand in hand with increasing shares of renewables in all sectors, as I have shown before, including in the sectors notably more difficult for penetration of renewables, being heating, being industry, or transport. Now, next slide. Here you have an overview of the key demand side measures. And first of all, is about the role and the exemplary role of the public sector, where we aim to renovate 3% of the public buildings per year, and to reduce the final energy consumption of 1.9% per year. We also have an article to increase the cumulative energy saving obligation, going up to 1.9% cumulative as of 2028. We have also energy efficiency in industries, and we have introduced energy management schemes for enterprises which have a consumption over 85 terajoule-hour, and a little bit less ambitious if you want to put less burden on those with only more than 10 terajoule to have energy audits. We have also important heating and cooling plants to ensure energy efficiency in municipalities with a total population over 40,000 inhabitants. They have to have these plants. And we have also definition of efficient district heating and cooling. This is quite an important feature in Europe. It serves almost 60 million customers, and there are 17,000 district heating systems operating in Europe. Next slide. Next slide is about the APBDs, the most recent one, which we had the conclusion of the trilogue last week, and where we speak about renovation, about minimum energy performance standards, about the certificates and how to make the certificates more harmonized and minimum criteria at European level, about the national building renovation plans, which actually replace long-term renovation strategies. Then we have the dimension of decarbonization, introducing zero-emission buildings as a new standard, consideration of whole life cycle carbon, phasing out of fossil fuels as an objective. I'll refer to this in the next slides. Also on financing, very important, sustainable finance and energy poverty alleviation, and how to do this financing and for what type of objectives through the renovation passports. The modernization and system integration, looking at infrastructure for sustainable mobility, linking the link also with e-mobility, introducing smart readiness indicators, and also looking at other sustainability and environmental dimensions which are important when we do renovations, for example. Next slide. As I said, we had the political trilogue just last week, and we expect a transposition deadline now by mid-2026. So this gives us a bit of 2 years for a lot of work, both at Commission level on guidance, clarifying, and on support to member states in the process of transposition. On the next slide, you see a couple of important provisions, in particular related to these renovations. When we speak about non-residential buildings, they have to be done based on this minimum energy performance standards and should have 16% of worst performing buildings by 2030 and 26% by 2033. For residential buildings, we are also ambitious in terms of renovations, 16% by 2030 and 22% by 2035. So with a supporting framework for vulnerable households and of course with some exemptions which are necessary in the market. Next slide is about the important zero emission buildings and the way we define them, and new standards for new buildings with a clear vision for 2050. To gradual introduction of life cycle global warming potential calculation. And this way we move from actually G glass building to zero energy buildings. Next slide. Few words about solar energy and sustainable mobility. This is also important for gradual installation of solar energy on existing buildings, including residential gradually. So this is all very important to the link efficiency and renewables. We also have the smart charging and where appropriate bidirectional charging, and also softer measures parking spaces for bicycles. Next slide is about the national building renovation plans. As I said, they replace long-term renovation strategies. So they are common and harmonized template with national targets, and member states have to set timelines for further improvement of their building stocks. We'll look into this and we'll have submission stages in this respect. We'll issue recommendations. We'll follow up on the building renovation passport schemes. We'll ask to create and support to create one-stop shops. And member states will also have to develop roadmaps, which roadmaps should include measures which will lead to phase out of fossil fuels in heating and cooling by 2040. Next slide is about the digitalization action plan. Work is progressing on this. It was adopted in 2022, and clearly digital technologies have a very important aspect of the energy transition because can enable and can facilitate when we speak about system integration, when we speak about integrating e-mobility, when we're speaking about storage and so on. All this digitalization will have an important role to play and will also help consumers and energy communities to play the role, the prosumers to be able to integrate it to the market. And the work is progressing on this plan, notably underlining this dimension of empowering citizens, offering them to provide the energy markets with their contribution, but also having access to all data required. The heat pump action plan, and this is my last point, it is foreseen for the next year. It's based on a communication head, and we aim to have the partnership between Commission and the member states to communicate to all interesting groups, to also link it to the legislation we have in particular in terms of eco-design and labeling, and to promote clearly the financing. Speaking about financing, I would like to mention here that a lot of the financing we have on this, it's basically concentrating on the demand side. We have here the recovery and resilience plans. We have the cohesion policy, and we speak of hundreds of billions of euros which are allocated, including for energy efficiency on demand side, on renewables, penetration also on the consumer-related side, in industry and transport. So the financing will be very important, but also the leveraging of financing as a financial instrument. So the Commission level will also launch now in December a strengthened ASIF with financing coalition, and this is to be noted as well. Thank you very much, and glad in the end I could make this contribution and wish a successful seminar, and will stay with you as much as possible. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Tudor, for the informative presentation. And clearly, there's a whole suite of policies that the Commission is putting together and implementing, really covering the various sectors. Now that we've heard about both regulation, information, incentives, and various types of approaches to the demand side, let's turn to Southeast Asia. And I believe Dr. Zulfikar Yurnaidi, the Manager of Energy Modeling and Policy Planning from ASEAN Center for Energy, is joining us today from Jakarta. So Dr. Zulfikar, many thanks for staying online with us and sharing the insights from the region. I would like to give you the floor now, and I hope the slides that you've shared with us can be put up on the screen as well. Hi, Zulfikar.
Hi. Yeah, just want to check if the organizer. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I'm looking at the slides now. All right, so allow me to start. I realize we have a bit of time delay, so I try to finish it as soon as possible, maybe 5 to 7 minutes. So I think I'll just go to the next slide. This is a very quick introduction about our organization, the ASEAN Center for Energy. So we are the intergovernmental organization. So we are actually under the ASEAN structure, and we represent the interests of the 10 ASEAN member states in the energy sectors. So we play several roles. First and foremost, we play a role as a think tank of the region. We basically conduct the studies and also provide policy recommendations. Among others is, of course, our flagship publication, the ASEAN Energy Outlook. The latest one, the 7th ASEAN Energy Outlook, was just launched last year, and we are currently working towards the next editions of ASEAN Energy Outlook to be published next year in Lao PDR. We also had several studies, including a roadmap on sustainable building, which I will share in here as one of the case regulatory framework that can be pushed towards more demand-side energy policies. We also play a role as a catalyst. We basically collaborate, support the collaboration within ASEAN, so within ASEAN member states, but also between ASEAN and also partners. Of course, I include the ACCJ and also IEA here as part of our strong collaborators in the region. Last but not least, we serve as a knowledge hub. So we gather informations, policy updates, news through our news clipping updates, and also statistics, especially for the monitoring of regional targets in renewable energy and energy efficiency. But first and foremost, our role is to implement the regional blueprint, which is the APAIC, which I can show you in the next slide. So APAIC, or the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, is the regional energy cooperation blueprint here in ASEAN. As noted, we aim to achieve energy security, accessibility, affordability, and sustainability for all, which we call the populace of energy cooperation, or energy trilemma, as you also know. And then we have 7 program areas ranging from the power grid, gas pipeline, oil and gas sector, basically, the clean coal technology, renewable energy, regional energy policy planning, civilian nuclear energy, and which I would like to highlight today is, of course, the energy efficiency and conservation. So from the regulatory perspective, we have a regional targets of achieving energy intensity reductions by 32% in 2025. And of course, further elevating the efforts of energy efficiency in industry and transport sector, which we noted as the sectors with the highest energy-related emissions. Next slide, please. And this is also, of course, to note that in each ASEAN member states, there are various targets of energy efficiency. I think 4 or 5 of those have targets on reducing energy intensity, but almost all actually have a target of reducing the final energy consumption compared to certain BAU level. So within the energy efficiency and conservation, these are our strategies and also action plans. To be noted, this is a regional level initiatives. We have 5 outcome-based strategies, or the OBS. As you can see here, the first, we try to focus more on the standard and labeling. This is, of course, to provide incentives for the consumers of the energy efficient products. And depends on the countries. There are several initiatives, like in Malaysia, they do have what they call the SAFE several period. Now they have like SAFE 3.0, in which they provide the rebates for the purchase of energy efficient appliances. So if you go to the online shop, for example, then you can see that for certain energy efficient appliances, both that have 4 and 5 star ratings, they can get an automatic e-rebate. So that sort of incentives are in line with the design of this standard and labeling, and also the promotion of those appliances. Second, of course, we need to focus on the private sector and financial institutions. Among others, we in ASEAN regularly do what we call the ASEAN Energy Awards. So this is conducted always together with the ministerial meeting. We call it the ASEAN Ministers on Energy Meeting, or AMEM, be done every year in the chair countries of the ASEAN. So this year we have it in Indonesia. And in these energy efficiency sectors, we do have like several categories, including net zero building and also others. So basically this would provide incentive for the industry players to have a more energy efficient programs in their buildings and their industry offices, so that they can get the proper recognitions from the regional level. So usually this recognition is coming from the national level first. So Indonesia have their own awards, and then it brings to the ASEAN level, so it competes between each other. So this is again another incentive that we provide, non-fiscal incentive that we try to provide in recognizing the efforts in demand side energy efficiency. And the last 3 strategies are focused on the 3 sectors of end-use sectors. So we have in building, we have in transport, and we do have in industry. And if you see, like in each these strategies, we do have specific action plans focused on this information sharing and also capacity building, because we noted that energy efficiency is more on this behavioral changes, consumer choices, and providing them with the proper information, public awareness, and also incentive would be very important. The same with the capacity building. In capacity building here, it means for the industry sector, so they know like the types of technologies that they can do, that they can apply, or measures that they can do, so that they can increase their energy efficiency efforts. So again, in each and every part of the strategies and action plans, we try to put a little bit more focus on these incentives and public awareness activities. Next slide, please. This is again from the ASEAN level. We are currently working, we just launched this, I think this year, the strategy for carbon neutrality. So in the bigger perspective, energy efficiency is an important part of it. So in connections with the energy climate nexus, we have this strategy for carbon neutrality. And among others, I would like just to put one point in here, which is to boost green industries. So what we try to do in the ASEAN is that how we can connect this energy transition. We know the energy transition can be costly, but we also notice that this can also provide a new engine growth, green energy growth for the future. So this is the virtuous cycle that we try to push in here, so that how we can build this supply chain, the industry of energy efficiency in the region, so it can it can provide a little bit more incentive, not only from energy saving, but also on the development of the local industries. Next slide, please. So my last 2 slides is just a little bit of this report is developed together with the IEA. So this is energy efficiency building and constructions. That's the actual name. So in this case, we try to define the sustainable buildings into 7 systems, starting from urban planning, new building, existing building, retrofit materials, and also others. And what kind of activities and also strategies that can be put so we can achieve this sustainable building by 2050. For example. So this is noting the various aspects for one single sector for building. So it needs to connect with various sectors as well. So next, my last slide. So this is what we try to do in every sector of energy. This include, of course, the end-use sectors. In this case, building, just for example, we try to attack the issues from three perspectives. First, of course, policy. Second, technology. Third is in the capacity, human capacity, especially. Within the policy itself, we have like three category as well. First, of course, in terms of regulations, there are many countries in the region that do not have a complete set of energy efficiency policies. So the standard and labelings, the regulations, we have energy managers, etc., etc. So this is something that we try to push. And further, we try to have a more interconnections in the regional level. For example, we initiated what we call the product registration system. So we listed the product of air conditioners and also others, and what would be the parameters of it from the whole region, so we can see what are the status for each country and the others. This is, of course, is to build more regional market in the future. So incentives, we have like financial and non-financial incentives. This can be very, very different, but this is also one of our focus, not only in building, but also, of course, in the transport sector, like how we can push this energy efficient vehicle, how we can improve the fuel efficiency, how we can improve the public transport, how we can shift this conventional vehicle into electric vehicle. All this falls under the energy efficiency sector, that all of those would require incentives. Last but not least, of course, the information. So that's why, as I mentioned before, in our strategies, we always put information, knowledge sharing with from between our member states, but also from the experts from the outside of the regions, the best practices, so we can share it with our stakeholders in ASEAN. So we are very open for more collaborations on these sectors, especially in innovations, information sharing, and also technologies development, and also financing in the future. So I'll stop there my presentations. Thank you very much, and back to Catherine.
Thank you very much, Zulfikar. And it was very comprehensive overview of regional activities that ASEAN Center for Energy is undertaking. And especially, I'm very much taken by the building roadmap. So it's a project that was developed together also with the IEAs, I understand. So net zero buildings are, of course, absolutely critical in this transition. And it really shows the full power of the demand side, where we're incorporating digital technologies, smart meters, and also renewable energy sources. So now, since we've ended on the note of talking about the building sector, I'd like to welcome my next speaker. And now we'll turn to a country whose energy sector is one of the least carbon intensive in the world, and that's Brazil. So our last speaker, Ms. Alexandra Maciel, National Coordinator for Ministry of Mines and Energy of Brazil, and she'll speak about the topic of buildings as well, and expand a bit more on demand response. So Alexandra, I think I see you online. Wonderful. I'd like to give you the floor now to speak about Brazil's demand side policies. Over to you, Alexandra. Alexandra, I think you're still on mute. We'll see if perhaps there's a possibility of asking Alexandra to unmute herself through Zoom. Thank you. Thanks very much for your patience. We'll just take a few more seconds waiting for our Brazilian panelist. Oh, wonderful. Alexandra,
Hello.
We can see you. Yes,
Hello.
great. We can see you and we can hear you. And this is exactly the time when we're starting with your presentation. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share our experience in Brazil regarding the demand response approach and smart metering. In the context of digitalization in the power sector here in Brazil, with the entrance of distributed generation, there was a clear changing from the unidirectional model to the smart grid. This change requires from energy utilities a new structural, administrative, and strategic view, and a more active grid management with focus on the client. This change requires from energy utilities, considering the Brazilian context, intelligent communication, data collection, and measurement to integrate distributed generation into the grid are not yet part of the protocols and measures adopted by the national utilities. There is no established regulation regarding power smart metering and data privacy. Therefore, we identified the opportunity for the power sector to promote the update of the current legal framework in this regard, and standardization is a fundamental requirement to establish digitalization here. In Brazil, the National Committee for the Production and Transmission of Electricity, the SIGRE, based on European directives and focused on the Brazilian market, has established working groups which are right now discussing about smart grids and the imminent digitalization of the Brazilian energy grid. In this context, we have identified that demand response can play a significant role in the Brazilian power sector, especially when considering current and future changes in the Brazilian electrical systems linked to consumer load curve pattern changes, as well as the growing share of these intermittent renewable energy sources as wind and solar power. The role of demand response in Brazil has been assessed in the energy planning studies since the 10-year expansion plan 2030 as an alternative to provide flexibility to the electrical generation capacity expansion in Brazil. So preliminary assessments for this alternative pointed out promising potential of demand response in Brazil as a competitive option to this expansion, mainly at dry seasons, considering that our power grid here is mostly based on hydropower. In order to better consider demand response in Brazilian energy planning, a specific study was designed by the Energy Research Office, aiming to, first, to better understand the regulatory issues that affect demand response scenarios, to develop a methodological approach to include demand response in the energy modeling, and finally, to identify the demand response potential for the Brazilian power sector. The scope of this study focused on representative energy-intensive industries in Brazil, such as aluminum, iron and steel, chlorine, cement, glass, pulp and paper, and food and beverages, as well as segments as data centers and sanitation. This study was concluded last November, and the results will allow to improve the methodology for considering demand response in the energy planning studies and better represent demand response potential in energy-intensive industries, data centers, and sanitation. We can also mention that in addition to contributing to the improvement of representation of demand response in the national energy planning process and in the development of demand response penetration scenarios, the results of the study also contribute to reducing information asymmetries with the industrial sectors. Next steps after the conclusion of this study include to internalize the proposed methodology from this study into the energy planning routine process, as well as update demand response portfolio by segment. So these steps will allow to establish demand response penetration scenarios and better understand its role for the Brazilian power sector as well as to the final consumers. We can share the results of this study, although it's in Portuguese, but if someone is interested, we can share the results in the complete results. So thank you very much. Thank you once again for the opportunity to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra, and thanks for highlighting this key policy of demand response that Brazil is focusing on. It's absolutely an important source of flexibility for the electricity grid. So now, as the next part of this panel, I would like to stay with you, Alexandra, actually, and see if you may have any questions for your peers, for the previous speakers, about their approaches to demand side policies, if anything in their remarks particularly stood out to you.
Actually, because we are some steps behind, we are always interested about the experience of other countries, mainly regarding regulations. So how some countries manage to deal with the utilities, to the energy utilities, and establish some steps and rules in order to make this the utilities to integrate smart meters into their measurement procedures, and also how which were the steps in order to make the utilities to integrate that, because we know that it's related to a cost impact, and that's why our energy utilities here complain every time we try to make an obligation to introduce the smart meters. So that's something that we are always interested to know the experience of other countries.
Thank you so much for raising that issue. Indeed, regulation is one of the key topics. So I wonder whether Tudor or Anoop may jump on this question and share their perspective on regulation.
Sorry, Tudor, you can go first.
No, you can go, please. No problem.
Sure, I can provide a little bit of an insight into the Australian context. So we've had a situation where overall smart meter rollout in Australia is only about 20, inching towards 30%. And just recently, the national sort of rule maker, Australian Energy Market Commission, has set a target. Now they realize that there's about $500 million of value in rolling out 100% smart meters to all of Australia. So that's an activity that's now sort of being formalized. But we do have the state I'm in, it's called Victoria. We went through about 10 years ago a smart meter rollout, and now about 98, pretty much 100% of Victorian consumers, so there's about 5.5 million people here, have access to smart meter data. And there's been an assessment. It's quite a costly exercise. So there was a lot of back and forth around the value. And in the initial years, I think we spent about over $300 million rolling it out. People were not convinced. But now, with all of this DER and the need to coordinate and orchestrate it, the value of having that visibility that smart meters provide, both for the consumer, but obviously for the distribution companies and for the energy market operator, has created this move to try to get 100% smart meter rollout by 2030, which is just 6 years away. So in Australia, regulations sort of caught up, and again, there's a lot of investment, but there seems to be a case that's made to have smart meter rollout accelerated to hit that 100% target.
Thank you so much, and over to you, Tudor.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. On our side, what I can say at European level, we try to provide the regulatory framework, the legislations, the directives, which of course have then to be implemented by all member states. Now, we had already, and I mentioned in my presentation, the Electricity Regulation Directive in 2019 with a number of very important provisions. Actually, this year in March, we have asked, and you should know, we have a certain model for the market with vertical unbundling. So the transmission system operators and so we working now together with the new created distributor system entity. We asked them this year to draft new rules that are network code or eventually guidelines to further support the development of demand response. And this includes rules on aggregations, on energy storage, on demand curtailment, on the metering, and this is an important aspect as well. So the reform which we propose now is to tackle the user flexibility services now by the energy operators. And so the Council Regulation Measures reform proposes the enable transmission system operators to procure actually demand reduction at peak hours through peak shaving products. We also propose an evolution in the system operators remuneration and the network tariffs, and of course then metering is very important. And also the demand side, we have proposals for metering concretely to unlock the potential for renewables, for prosumers and so on to be integrated and to be quantified as well and properly remunerated in the market. So all these are part of this, and then I indicated it already. Based on the previous legislation, member states have done quite significant progress. Overall, is 50% deployment. But again, they put an obligation on their national TSO and DSO based on the EU legislation, and where we will have also the guidance which I have mentioned. As I indicated in a few countries, in about 7 countries, we already have 98% rollout of smart meters. So it means there is a good business case as well, and we encourage further with the new directive and the regulation to advance into this direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm also looking at Naoki Tosaka, if you would like to comment on that question of regulation from Brazil as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And in Japan, smart meter is not so popular for the industry. I mean, the companies manage their own energy consumption as their the price of the electricity or natural resources or something. So so if I answer the questions, maybe our way to promote the demand response is not limited to smart meters, but I guess in Japan, the companies can use our subsidies to introduce smart meters, which is I was mentioned in my presentation.
Thank you very much. And now turning to ASEAN Center for Energy, Zulfikar, would you like to come in on this question as well?
Yeah, thank you. I think regulatory, of course, is very important, especially in some of our member states, like some countries like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar. They do not even have the proper regulatory framework, including like maybe in standard and labeling. They actually start working on that with the support from the international collaborators. So I think this is basically regulatory is the basic for everything, right? We have regulatory, and then you can have the incentive support, and then you can have these promotions to the public sectors, the industry, the buildings, the household consumers, so that they can participate in this energy efficiency. Maybe like, for example, in some countries, they have a very strong policies on the ESCOs, for example, which can support in energy efficiency projects. Some types of regulatory frameworks, of course, including like in some countries, they have like the minimum energy usage per building or per industry, of which you need to report your energy utilization. You need to do your annual energy audit and reporting. And the limit of this energy use can be different from country to another, and this of course will impact on the incentive for the building owners, for construction sectors, for industry factories, whether they have to do this energy efficiency efforts or not. Maybe just additional point, has been discussed as well about this smart metering. I think the digitalization is another important factor. I think I do have one slide on digitalization, but I forgot to share it previously. But basically, this is the enabling factor that I think will be very important for ASEAN in pursuing this energy efficiency, demand side management, demand response, because only by this digitalization, at the very least, the users can see like how much energy they use, how much it costs them, and what kind of measures or behaviors that they can do to reduce their energy usage. And this also, of course, will be helpful from this the control side of the energy usage to do that. So I think this is in addition to regulatory, of course, the rollout of the digitalizations in all aspects of energy, but especially in the energy sector, would be very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zulfikar, and thanks others as well. Digitalization, thank you for raising this topic. It's, of course, quite a key element of the demand side policies. And actually, since we're going in reverse order, actually, I would like to stay with you, Zulfikar, and see if you may have any questions to the previous speakers as well.
Yeah, I think compared to many countries represented here, Southeast Asia is we compose mostly of emerging, developing technologies, start to develop our policies. Many of those probably have been tried in in Australia, in EU, in Brazil, etc., etc. So maybe just to stand on top of those giants, maybe my question would be like, what would be your lesson learned in terms of building demand response, demand side management? What works, what doesn't work, so that we can build our policies in a better positions. So I think that would be my questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And the question is really lessons learned about demand side management. So I would like to see if anyone on the screen would like to take that question first.
Okay, Christina, I may say a few words.
Thank you.
because yeah, of course, the EU has perhaps one of the longest journeys in terms of promoting energy efficiency and demand side measures and on all sectors. And I dare to say, which by now, hopefully with some proven success. But if it is about lessons drawn, I have to say we have noticed this across member states, and perhaps that's why it's also relevant, because we had to look and to develop measures, to develop initiatives, legislation, but also financing tools for countries which started to move in this field very early, others which started to be interested a bit later, some coming out of an economic crisis, some being in the top 7 developed economies, other being maybe not even in OECD. So if you want from this perspective, the EU of 27 member states now offered a variety of perspectives on how to promote and how to make energy efficiency and demand measures successful, depending also on the circumstances of the country in question. I think it's important. What proved for us very important was, of course, to try to agree on some common objective, on some common targets, then to try to have a transparent and also fair distribution, if you want, of objectives and sub-targets among the countries, a combination, if you want, of top-down and bottom-up approach, in which they had to look also at their sectors and where the biggest potential were, where the biggest benefits at the end of the day were. And then to have the regulatory framework, the legislation, which means in some cases compulsory ones like minimum performance standards, but also labeling, but also taxation or other, which can be at the member state level from our side, just with suggestions, a type of measures combined with the financing, including state aid, but regime, but also the fresh money which can come with the different European programs, but which at the end of the day, one has to notice that represents just a small fraction of all happening, because public money are not sufficient and definitely not the EU ones. But important is to achieve the leveraging and to have the money driving some changes and some programs which are consistent and aligned with the regulatory framework we put in place for the market, including the specific energy efficiency market with all what involves, from installers to manufacturers of all type of equipments, to be able to operate and to develop the business case in good conditions. Important is to have all these measures put in place, taking into account the, let's say, the national circumstances, but not just one measure or the other. This would prove that it's difficult to work. We really need to advance a number of things, from standards, as I said, compulsory or more binding measures, to the information ones, and to campaigns and education in a simultaneous manner, and to support them through some financing, which to be, if you want, the driving character in this process.
Thank you very much. Alexandra, Anoop, would you like to comment on this question as well? I'm also looking at...
Actually, we don't have much to share because we don't have an practical experience on demand side management. The only thing that I can mention is that we are implementing a program in the public sector in order to certificate in ISO 50001, and in regard to energy management. The more we improve our energy management, the more we need smart metering, and because if you want to change your behavior according to your demand, you have to improve your monitoring. And so we identify the importance of improving the way we monitor our energy consumption and our energy demand. And I think with this experience, we can understand better how to improve this side of the demand side management.
Thank you very much. And now also looking at Anup and Mr. Tosaka, in case you would like to say a few words. Oh, yes, you do? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
for the demand side management. Yeah, in Japan, our most strong way to manage of the management is regulation and the Energy Conservation Act. And we have two approaches for the industries and households. And for the industry, we obliged to submit the report of the energy consumption, and if their effort to decrease the energy consumption is not so good, the company cannot use energy conservation subsidies, which is I think our most strong way for the companies. But on the other hand, for households, actually, we don't have the direct way to manage the energy consumptions, but we are approaching for the household by introducing the more efficient products or appliance, and we by using the, as I said, a kind of maps in our country. It is called Top Runner. So this is the way to demand our energy demand side.
Thank you very much. And at this time, in the interest of time, which we are running a bit behind, unfortunately, so I would like to see if Tudor or Anup has any questions for other panelists at this time. So we may take two more questions and then we'll have to start wrapping up. So Tudor, Anup.
I might just pose a quick question. I suppose, you know, a lot of the challenge in this space is about sequencing the sort of the energy transition, because there are a lot of things that needs to happen. And in Australia, what we're trying to do is find the right order in which we execute that. So, you know, I would be very interested in the various jurisdictions the panelists are sort of involved in. What would you say is sort of the immediate piece over the next, let's say, 12 to 24 months in your respective jurisdictions that in the context of the electricity market specifically, that you think will change? So, I mean, we spoke about smart meters and those sort of things, but yeah, in the short term, 12 to 24 months, I'd be interested to see if there are some specific things that you're focusing on, highest priority.
Thanks so much for the question. So it's really 12 to 24 months. What are some of the key focuses for your markets? Just seeing if anyone online would like to take that question. Tudor, I wonder if the European Commission, oh, thank you.
I think for us, we presented already, and now the focus for the next 12 to 24 months is exactly the transposition of all these directives, which took quite a lot of efforts for putting in place and for negotiating. Now there is a transposition period for member states, and our efforts will have clearly to go to accompany member states as much as possible in this transposition efforts, because at the end of the day, this will secure the proper implementation afterwards.
Zulfikar?
Yeah, so maybe it's a little bit different in the sense that our current energy cooperation blueprints will end by 2025, as I mentioned before, and actually starting for the next 12 and 24 months, I think our in addition to implementing the current one, we will be very busy on what will be the next period, and this include the new targets, the new program areas, even the new strategies and the new action plans that we might want to set up. And maybe additional comment that I want to put is that for our next APAIC, we are currently thinking of a longer perspective. Previously, we have like 10 years and divided into 2 phases, but now there was an intention of having it in 20 years. So we need to think until 2045, for example, with 5 years targets and also in general strategies. Of course, we will have time to modify it every 5 years or every 10 years. So that's the thing that we need to do. But in the meantime, in the short term, what's also important is that to meet the target that we set in 2025. Like, for example, in energy efficiency, our target is to reduce energy intensity by 32% compared to 2005 level by 2025. And we are currently, as far as I remember, still quite far. We're still in 24%. It's the data from 2021. So with the next 2 years, we need to accelerate the efforts of how we can achieve it in the short limited time. But at the same time, we need to see like the next 5, 10, 20 years, like how we need to set our goals, what kind of strategies that we need to see. So again, as I mentioned, this is a high time for us to learn more from the best practices, lesson learned, the failed cases where we should not step to, so that we can better plan the next edition of our energy cooperation blueprint, the APAIC. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to take this question? All right, Tudor, then I want to give you the floor to ask one of our last questions for this session today, pointed to any of the presenters before you.
Okay, thank you, Christina. What come to my mind now, because we heard a lot of interesting things, but a little bit as an umbrella question, if you want. Now we had the COP, and while looking forward to the final results, we that we had this pledge for doubling energy efficiency by 2030, improvements and tripling the renewables. Now I would have the question: how do you think, to my colleague panelist, what would be your steps now? Because we had over 120 countries signing this pledge, so it's a best endeavor from all of us. Commitment is not a binding one, but it's really based on understanding and on the fact that we are committed to make these things happening. So what will be your actions? In what sectors you'll start to do, and how do you see the perspective to promote and to get to these levels of improvements of energy efficiency in your country, in your region? How do you envisage the next steps on this?
Thank you, Tudor, and perhaps we'll start with Alexandra.
Yes. Here in Brazil, regarding this target of doubling energy efficiency, we are focusing on 2 main sectors, the building sector and the industry sector. And regarding the building sector, we have an implementing plan to make towards near zero energy buildings, and in which we are planning some steps to be achieved through different typologies of buildings, starting with public buildings, federal public buildings, and then state buildings and municipalities, and going through commercial buildings and residential ones, in which we are making the energy performance certificates mandatory. And the buildings through these different typologies and levels will have to first achieve the level C of the label, then the level B, level A, until the condition of achieving this zero energy building approach. And regarding the industry sector, we are implementing two big energy efficiency programs. One is called Alliance Program for energy intensive industries, in which we provide technical assistance and financial instruments to make to support the industry to improve their conditions of energy efficiency. And we also have a very similar program for small and medium companies called Potencialize. And with these two programs, we intend to improve some measures, very concrete measures for the industry. And I believe with these two sectors, I think these are the main actions that we are taking right now, foreseeing this target of doubling energy efficiency. I think
Wonderful.
that's it.
Thank you so much. And now I'll turn to Zulfikar, and in 1 minute or less, please. What are some of the key measures that you're looking at with regards to doubling?
Yeah, it's a very difficult questions, but I think from our organization ACE, at least we are currently working towards a more regional standards. We had from air conditioner and also lighting, but there are many appliances out there such as refrigerator, chiller, and not mentioning the industry applications, industry equipments that we need to have like proper standard. And I think compared to other countries, Southeast Asia, our energy efficiency in industries relatively low. So that's maybe one of the key measures that we can do from our side. The second, of course, on the knowledge sharing and public awareness. So I think a lot of capacity building, a lot of events that are geared towards public populace are something that we would like to push, again, to answer the previous question for the next 12 and 20 months, 24 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anoop, would you like to take that on next?
Sure. So I can't speak too much to the energy efficiency part of it. I'm aware that the Australian government has signed up to both the doubling of energy efficiency by 2030 and also tripling of renewable energy generation. In Australia, certainly the renewable energy generation piece is something that's happening naturally anyway. So we're getting there, regardless of whether we want it or not. Everyone's putting up solar panels on their roofs and batteries, and electrification is a serious thing. Efficiency, I think it's a longer journey for us, and I can't speak too authoritatively about it, but there are quite a few standards already in place, and I expect we'll be looking to strengthen some of those. Whether it's sort of the housing efficiency piece and or white goods and all of that to hit that target. But I'm aware we've signed up to it, so hopefully that means that we will take action.
Thank you very much. And now over to Japan, more on doubling.
Yeah. Thank you. And in Japan, we have been challenged to improve energy efficiency, and as you know, Japan is one of the top score of the energy intensity, but we are focusing on the not the large scale company. We are focusing on the SMEs because SMEs have not obliged to submit the report or the plan to the improving energy efficiency to the government by the Energy Efficiency Act. So we are just started the support to the experts advices by the subsidies. And so, yeah, SMEs is maybe our focus.
Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to start closing the session. Clearly, this first session has demonstrated that governments have a number of tools at their disposal to really support the doubling of energy efficiency, but also tripling of renewables. So we covered regulation, incentive, information in the various contexts. Now I'd like to ask us to put our hands together for the panelists online. Many thanks. Please join me in the round of applause for everyone. Thank you very much for participating in panel 1.
Thank you very much, Christina.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
Christina. Thank
Have a
you
nice
for
day,
all
everyone.
and
Thank
excellent
you.
speakers.